his goal is to win. Whether you do it flashy or you do it with pounding the rock, it doesn't matter. But once again, Christian McCaffrey will get his yardage. But you know what he proved to me in Green Bay is that he's human. Anytime you have those kinds of weather conditions, I don't care how good of a running back you are, you're good. They contained him enough, and the Packers came away with the W, and that's really what they more or less had to do, anyways. Any other games that stand out for you yesterday?
Well, before I go on any other games, I also have to say kudos to the Packers defense. They showed up, and they showed up big yesterday after going to Los Angeles last week and laying an egg to the Chargers. So they showed up, and they showed that they're still for real yesterday as well. The Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens, I don't have anything to say about the Bengals. I think they're a mess, but I do have to say this right now before I touch on to the game. And this is alluding to you saying that Joe Burrow should be the number 1 overall pick. Doesn't that just make sense at this point? For him to be the number 1 overall pick and for the Bengals to have the number 1 overall pick? I mean, this is an Ohio kid anyway.
Right. Good point. Well, let's stay on the Ohio theme for a moment, if I may. Mike Pettin used to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, albeit during the Johnny Manziel era. And Mike Pettin is a very underrated football coach and a good defensive mind. And that was another good hire by the Packers. Now, as far as when you talk about Tua, the guy who I actually think will be a better pro quarterback than Tua is Jalen Hurts. And he's with the Oklahoma Sooners. So I don't know why everybody's making a big deal out of Tua. I really don't. Jalen Hurts, I think he'll be a better pro prospect than Tua, especially if he's dealing with durability issues. He will get hammered at the next level if he's getting hammered in college. What makes you think it's going to get any easier at the pros?
Well, I can tell you one of the reasons that people absolutely gush over Tua, and at times I've been a victim of it, but it's something that we don't take into account. Yes, he is dynamically gifted. Yes, he has a strong arm. And, of course, everyone always alludes to that second half that just completely turned me into a meltdown in college on one night in the college football playoff national championship against my beloved Georgia Bulldogs. But here's what we don't take into account when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa. He's playing at Alabama. He's being coached by Nick Saban. At one point, he was also being coached by Lane Kiffin. Now, Steve Sarkisian's there as well. And I know people have had things to say about Sark, but Sark knows the X's and O's of the game. But here's the biggest factor of all of this that people do not take into account when it comes to Alabama and their quarterbacks. Look how dominant those offensive lines always usually are year in and year out. That's something to consider. And he's already getting banged up behind those really good offensive lines.
Right. Okay. So you're making my point for me. You really are. That's what you're really basically doing. You're making my point for me. If he thinks it's going to get any easier in the pros, fat chance, okay? Alabama's produced a lot of quarterbacks through the years. Ever heard of Kenny Stabler? Yeah, he turned out okay. Joe Namath turned out okay. A.J. McCarron, it wasn't a bad quarterback, but he had landed in the right situation instead of being a backup behind everybody. So Greg McElroy, I think, was another one. But how did those guys turn out in the pros, okay? In fact, how many great running backs have turned out with Alabama? Just because you play well at Alabama doesn't mean your skill set's going to go ahead and translate into the pros. Not buying it, okay? Not going to buy it at all. And the list goes on and on. They do produce a lot of great players, don't get me wrong, not going there. But my opinion, if Tua's getting battered over at Alabama, life isn't getting any easier on Sundays.
No, I strongly agree with you on that. That's why I'm officially out on him being the number 1 overall draft pick or the number 1 overall quarterback at this point.
Right.
Because that's something that you have to consider. It definitely is. So I'm definitely in full agreement with you on that. But, getting back to the Ravens and Bengals on yesterday.
Sure.
The Baltimore Ravens, and I know we didn't see the New England Patriots play this week because they're on a bye week. Scott, the Baltimore Ravens look like the favorite who are going to come out of the AFC.
Right. Yeah, they look pretty good. Lamar Jackson's doing well. Mark Ingram's a fine running back. I'm sure they have other players that I'm not even bringing up. But, yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see a potential rematch between the Ravens and the Patriots. The Ravens stack up against a lot of good teams, but you have to see everything all. And sports, Xavier, really comes down to the matchup is really what it comes down to. I don't care. And then you know what? In the NFL, in the playoffs, and also home field does make a lot more of a difference than it does in the World Series, as we call, because no home team won in the World Series, and conditions can make a big deal when it comes to pros, especially during the playoffs. So
now, Scott, I'm not going to touch much on the Bengals in this subject because they are what they are.
Right.
And just also due to the fact that Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon have been on my fantasy team all season, and they've done absolutely nothing for me. But with that being said, who do we look at the most for what is going on in Cincinnati? Do we look at first-year head coach Zach Taylor?
I say no. He walked into a tough. It's one thing for a college coach to go to the pros. It's another for a college coach to go to a team that couldn't even beat a college team. The way they're playing. Everybody thought the Dolphins were a wreck. I still think that Andy Dalton will resurrect his career someplace else. But that's a tough situation. I really feel bad for the Bengals fans. I feel, for that matter, I actually feel bad for the... I feel bad for everybody there. Everybody looked at Marvin Lewis. He ended up going out to the Arizona State Sun Devils out there and joining Herman Edwards. Marvin was probably glad. Well, I'm kind of glad to be out of there after all. He knew the situation was trending downhill. He knew it. He's not stupid. He's not stupid.
Yes, and as far as I'm concerned, you spoke about the fan base and everybody there in Cincinnati. As far as I'm concerned, the Bengals should be giving every one of those fans their money back just for even coming to watch that atrocious product that they put out there on the field.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing that I'm intrigued about is the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Rams 17-12. The Steelers are winning ugly. Everybody who was on Mike Tomlin's case earlier, but I'll tell you what, Mike is doing one of his best coaching jobs. I'll tell you, with that team 5-4, everybody wrote them off early because they lost Antonio Brown and then he lost Le'Veon Bell. But meanwhile, 5-4 in a tough AFC conference. Kudos to them. Who knows whether they get in the playoffs or not, but I still think this will be one of Mike's better coaching job, much less the fact they lost Ben Roethlisberger at the beginning of year 2, and he's making a lot out of the roster that he has.
You say one of his better coaching jobs. I actually say that this is his best coaching job so far.
Well, that's fine.
He's solidifying that he is a top 5 coach in the league, no doubt about that. And I never wanted to see him leave Pittsburgh anyway. But the rumblings were out there. They were 1-4. They didn't look very good. Now they're on a 4-game win streak, and this is the most notable part of it all, Scott.
What's that?
They have reestablished some form of a defensive identity,
right,
which is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are about anyway.
Right.
But that was the huge knock on Mike Tomlin for all these past few years. You were brought here as a defensive mind, and now all of a sudden the team is not playing very good defense. And you have to give the Steelers front office credit. They pulled the trigger on the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade when a lot of people out there thought that was a bad deal. And Minkah Fitzpatrick won the football game for you yesterday as far as I'm concerned. And, Scott, I think that this is a very reasonable question for us to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is TJ going to be the better Watt than JJ going forward? Because he absolutely just leaps off my screen.
Well, if he stays healthy, he will. JJ had been able to stay healthy, Xavier. TJ, I hope he does. But they come from Wisconsin. They're big. They know how to play football, especially at that university. But the Watt family produces good football players. It just so happens that the Steelers scouting department, and let's not lose sight of the biggest thing about the Steelers. They've only had 3 head coaches, and since 1970, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin. Really? 3? Pretty impressive. Real impressive.
Just a kudos to the Rooney family and the organization that they've ran for all these years. But, we look at the Steelers. There's Minkah Fitzpatrick. There was a Joe Hayden sighting in the game on yesterday. A fantastic rookie in Devin Bush. Bud Dupree played well. T.J. Watt. The only person who they're really missing up front on that defensive front seven is Stephon Tuitt, and he was injured earlier in the season with a torn pectoral, I believe it was.
Right.
And, of course, he's out for the rest of the season, but he's another great player for them. And they're doing this without any type of real quarterback play, any type of real running back play. They're doing this basically without any type of offense right now.
Right.
That's what's very impressive to me. And this is why I'm also not very impressed with what the Cleveland Browns did on yesterday. I want to see if the Cleveland Browns can come back and do this again on Thursday. I mean, right now, they're the better team on paper. On paper, they're supposed to be the better team. Now, let's get back to the Los Angeles Rams really quickly.
Sure.
Scott, I knew that Jared Goff was not the guy who so many people tried to proclaim him to be. I knew this from day one. You know, Sean McVay really is coming there, and he's really worked wonders with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is not a bust. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's just slightly a little above average.
Right.
And you look at what the Los Angeles Rams have absolutely done, and when you look at a game like yesterday, you really sit back and question moves like trading all your draft picks away for Jalen Ramsey, or paying Todd Gurley too early. You have no offensive line. And if you don't have an offensive line, Jared Goff is basically toast.
Oh, yeah.
You have no offensive line. You don't have a consistent run game anymore. And not to mention another guy who they shouldn't have paid, Scott, Brandon Cooks. And the reason I say you shouldn't have paid him, when Brandon Cooks came to the Los Angeles Rams, he already had a history of concussions anyway. Why is he out again now? For another concussion.
Right.
So God bless him. I hope he's able to get over all of this. But it's not looking good right now. You know, the Los Angeles Rams, they've given out a lot of money. And last year they were being crowned the genius football organization and the place where everybody goes to have fun, and they sign the big free agents and they win games, and it's just not working.
Right.
And at this point, I'm willing to go as far as saying they're going to go from being NFC champions to not making the playoffs. There are just too many good teams in the NFC. You know, knock on wood, because we don't want anything like this to happen to anyone, but it would take a ravish of injuries to a slew of teams for the Rams to make the playoffs now at this point.
Wow,
the Vikings are really good. The Packers are really good.
Right.
Saints are still there.
Right.
You have the Seahawks and 49ers in their own division.
Correct. Yep. I agree. Well, I don't see the Rams getting to the playoffs. You're right. And they traded a lot to get Jalen Ramsey. I think when we talk about the Ramsey trade, I still believe that the Jaguars fleeced the Rams, and I'll never stop believing in that, to get 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick. But, you know, you're right. Pretty hard to debate any of that. You're right on point. The 49ers have come a long way in a short period of time, and, you know, and I can only imagine how much better they're going to get, especially since they've added Emmanuel Sanders, who got rescued from the Denver Broncos, and now is with Jimmy Garoppolo. So, you know, they keep putting... See, here's the thing. Once you establish a team, then when you're also trying to go ahead and fill in pieces, it becomes another story altogether, versus trying to figure out holes all over the place. That's where the puzzle is interesting, but... The best part about the Thursday night game, though, Xavier, is I won't be watching it because I'll be broadcasting the Sports Exchange with us. So I really, frankly, don't care about too many more Browns games. And I have sleep apnea, and if I were at home, I wouldn't mind loading up on my Trazodone to not have to watch a stupid football game for a team that doesn't have any business being there anyways. So go figure. Any other interesting stuff on the NFL front?
Well, before I touch on any more games, I also have to say this about the Los Angeles Rams, and I want to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
Because when I go back and I just look at how they have decided that they're going to build this football team, Scott, I just wonder, you know, being in Tinseltown, Hollywood, being in LA, is this also a detriment more than it is a